Good evening to everyone, and welcome to our house. My name is Paloma Duran. I'm the director of the Sustainable Development Goals Fund, which is a mechanism that was created for the implementation of the new Agenda for Development approved by member states in this house last September. So I'm going just to be very brief to start as soon as possible with the distinguished panel that we have today. But before, I would like to really welcome to all of you to talk and to listen about architecture and sustainability. Welcome to all member states here represented by different delegations. Also welcome to the UN agencies and also participants from civil society. I'm going just only to say welcome and thank you. Thank you to the panelists, of course, and the laureates of the Pritzker Prize that we have here with us. Thank you and congratulations especially to the last one, which is Alejandro Arevena, who is also with us. Thank you to Kathleen for being the moderator for this debate this afternoon and also for the time spent here. Thank you especially to the Executive Director of the Pritzker Prize, Martha, for all the efforts and all the work that she is doing, trying to promote this collaboration and this idea to discuss about this important team. And also I would like to use this chance to really thank you, the UN family, especially security, conference services, and all the people that are really helping for the organization of this event. And especially thank you to my team that during the last weeks really worked very, very hard to organize this conversation today. So thank you so much. And as yesterday Alejandro mentioned in the statement during the ceremony for the prize, is really important to learn the difference between what is important and what's not. And I hope that this conversation really help us to understand that and also to promote the importance of these efforts to improve the quality of life for many people. So thank you so much, and I'm going to give the floor to Martha Tornay. Thank you.
Thank you, Paloma. I'm Martha Thorne, the Executive Director of the Pritzker Architecture Prize. And on behalf of the whole prize organization, let me say it's a real privilege to be here within the United Nations, this symbolic, optimistic, hopeful setting. And I think it has a lot to do with the architects and the architecture that they'll be discussing today. This event is sponsored by the Pritzker Architecture Prize organization along with the Sustainable Development Goals Fund, and it's part of an initiative to broaden the debate about architecture. When the prize was founded in 1979, one of the pivotal goals, or one of the principal goals, was to make architecture a subject for the broadest public possible. So it's a privilege to be here with you, with the laureates, and with the UN family. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to our moderator, Kathleen McGuigan. She is, of course, Senior Editor, Editor-in-Chief, perfect title, Editor-in-Chief of the prestigious journal Architectural Record, published out of New York, and probably the most important journal within the United States at this time. She is incredibly knowledgeable about architecture, journalism. She knows how to ask the hard questions, and we're thrilled and privileged to have her with us. Kathleen, thank you, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Paloma. Thank you all for coming this evening. It is wonderful to be here in this beautiful room where you feel you really have to accomplish important things and make important decisions. It's a bit of an intimidating room, but very beautiful and very appropriate, as Martha said, for what we're going to be discussing tonight. We are going to be, I'm going to be extremely brief because we want to get to our distinguished panel of speakers who will be discussing the future of architecture and the built environment. Before we begin, I just wanted to say a word about Zaha Hadid, who was originally going to take part in this evening with us. She was, as people like to make a bit of a fuss about, the first woman to win the Pritzker Prize in 2004. But I think what matters to all of her colleagues and all of us here is really her visionary work and her complete devotion to the field of architecture. And now I want to get on with the program, which was created by really this year's laureate, Alejandro Aravena. It has been a pleasure to work with him in developing this evening. Very simple format. Each architect will have about 3 minutes to discuss the following question, big question, not a lot of time. What are the challenges ahead for the built environment? And we asked them each, if they could, to perhaps give an example of one of their works which addresses some of those challenges in some way. After we've heard from all 7 laureates, we'll have a conversation up here, and then we will open up to questions from all of you. If you have a question, please write it on that piece of paper that should be in front of you, and you will pass it to 2 people who work on Paloma's team who will raise their hand. Can you tell me your names again? Teresa and Victor, who will be kind of circulating the room and picking up your questions. And we will be selecting them. We may not be able to get to all of them, but we will do our best. Also, I assume most of you know who the laureates are, know their work, and there's always Google. I'm not going to do long introductions, but I will now introduce them in the order in which they will speak. From my immediate left, Richard Rogers of London, who was the laureate in 2007. Richard is very apologetic that he has to leave early, so when he tiptoes out, it is not because he is fed up with us. Right, Richard? Absolutely. Next to him, Glenn Murcutt of Australia, laureate from 2002, who is going to begin to be the chairman of the jury for the Pritzker Prize next year. Then Christian de Porzenpark of Paris, laureate in 1994. Next to him, Wang Shu of Guangzhou, China, who was the laureate in 2012. Renzo Piano of Genoa and Paris, laureate in 1998. Jean Nouvel of Paris, laureate in 2008. And of course, this year's Pritzker laureate, Alejandro Aravena of Santiago, Chile. So please join me in welcoming them. And without interruption between, we will begin with Richard.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say how good I thought Alexandra's speech yesterday, and he left little for me to say in the terms of what I want to talk about, which is the role of the architect, which doesn't quite answer the question I was asked, but then that's typical architects. Architecture, as Alexander explained so well, is a humanist tradition, has a humanist tradition. It is art and science, it is civic, it is political, it creates the built environment. I think the built environment should be seen as important as health or education or any of the other food, or those major elements. It isn't. And I think the role of the architect is being eroded, seriously eroded. We are in a time where architects are seen as practically as decorators. And part of that comes obviously out of the capitalist society, which says, how can we lower the fees? And the architects, of course, easy. Just lower the amount of work or how well we do the work. So we're now in a situation where we are really decorators. We have become, in response to the need, we have become rather like the proverbial gorilla to which we select the lipstick. That's not architecture at all. Architecture is about changing the environment by humanizing it. A bad environment, a bad built environment, brutalizes it. I think it is time that we looked at architecture, design, in a very different way. I think education needs to be relooked at and treated much more like, let us say, universities should be more like hospitals, where there are all sorts of overlapping activities, not just architects or engineers or planners, but there are also philosophers, economists, and all the other things which overlap in our profession. What we're also beginning to see more and more are tiny offices, because that's the only way they can keep alive. And they haven't got the power. Some work very well, but many don't want to do what they're being forced to do. But really, they should be in a position to lead. And again, go back to the elements I mentioned, education or health, to lead in that spirit. I believe that we have to change the whole nature of the role of the architect. That probably is the first thing. And to do that, the public, and specifically the clients, have to look at the built environment in a very different way. We all love going to beautiful cities for holidays and so on. So why not recognize that if we want to have a place where we are happy in, a place where we are sheltered, remembering that 50% of the world does not have shelter over their heads, housing. Surely that, again, Alejandro made some very good points on all that. That must be a critical problem to be solved. But then who actually pays for the low cost of social housing, as he calls it? We need a society that recognizes it, that they have to give as much to thinking about how we give shelter to the poor as to the very, very wealthy. I think that's my 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Follow on. Thank you, Richard, very much. I've practiced most of my 47 years as a sole operator. I tried to respond to the environmental issues from the beginning. So I'm not going to talk about those environmental issues at all. I'm going to be talking about a challenge that I see of the built environment, and that is as yet not fully formed or detailed or defined. It is the challenge arising from social and religious prejudices which increasingly underpin some truly unacceptable social and political activities, at least in my world. So, the project I will talk about briefly is a mosque that I am doing for 1,000 participants. Migration has brought many from the Islamic nations to Australia, and practitioners of Islam are proposing mosques. In my country, there are huge problems. I think they might not be alone in that. I've read about New York also having these difficulties. The real issue is fear. And in taking on the mosque, it's been a very demanding project. I've been advised that I perhaps shouldn't take it on. It has ended up being one of the most wonderful projects anybody could have actually participated. The clients have been marvellous. And of course, the real problem is that in the name of Islam, some of the world's greatest atrocities of this part of the century have been perpetrated by the Islamic so-called practitioners. And my clients tell me these are just criminals, but it has given a face to Islam in my country that is totally unreasonable. I'm sorry, I'm very emotional about this. And so I took the project on, and over the last 10 years, it has been an extraordinary enlightenment for me. No longer am I pursuing a mosque that is from the Arab world. It is a mosque without a dome. It is a mosque without a minaret. It is a mosque without many of the courtyard walls. But it is a mosque that is not exclusive, but it is inclusive. It's a mosque that you can see into. It is a mosque that has water gardens, but not entirely within walls. It is a mosque that contains light shafts. It contains light lanterns. The lanterns are coloured. These roof lanterns face north, south, east and west. The north are green. Green for Islam is nature and is beautiful. East is yellow. Yellow is for paradise. Red is for blood, which gives strength. Blue is for the sky, and this is to the south. And as the sun moves around during the day, it is so beautiful to see the light now coming in. It's only 2 months away from completion. And so I'm just putting forward the idea that we can, in a society that is anti-Islam, we can produce some work that actually can bring Islam back into our community and becomes an addition to the culture. We in our country have the most wonderful culture that's been added to year after year by the migration of people. It is an amazing place, and Islam can be another added culture, added aspect to our culture. I do enjoy this project so greatly, the people so greatly, and for me, it is one of the great joys of my practice in 47 years. Thank you.
I would like to speak about one special, particular, and universal topic, which is a danger we faced in our urban spaces. Responsibility for the vast suburbs of metropolis, which are absolute major part of them, of the cities, falls on us. In half of the case, there are social dumping grounds. Inequality are set by and in the space, and poverty is determined by the neighborhood in which you are born or in which you live. It is not only a political issue. As architect, physical space and the way in which it is experienced is our matter. Physical space is a field that the contemporary world no longer has a grip on. And there is a danger. It came the first technical revolution, mechanization. The train and the automobile are practical wonders. They introduced tentacular motorway and railways, which became pipes cutting the territories. Due to the efficiency, decades of absolute priority to the automobile and happen. Le Corbusier endlessly advocates the death of the street. He put that at the Article 8 of the Athens Chart. And this is leading him to the invention of the functional zoning, a logical deconstruction of the street. He founded the street archaic because the street mixed every function. And he created the monofunctional camp, storing this function in more or less a private zone. Zone for the rich, zone for the poor, it became, zone for the offices, zone for logical storage, and zone for shopping center. The fate of a zone is to be closed, to be an enclave, to force a city to go around it, to evaluate toward privatization or ghettoization, separating rich and poor workers and unemployed. We are used to seeing it as inevitable. It is true that it is not the neighborhood that creates unemployment, but enclaves and walls separates up, saps hope, split us from others, makes difficulty to evaluate, and the most deprived enclave are placed outside the law. As a reminder, the city was a continuous system on the territory, a continuous system spanning 20th century almost, or more. Spanning because it had a DNA for change and for growth. This DNA is very simple. It is a street stool, and therefore the block stool. The street allows you to go everywhere. The block places all construction directly on this network of street. The street and block system is a way of marketing real estate that makes everyone independent and linked to the public infrastructure. The street is a perfect unity, gathering unknown diversity, aleatory. It is a spatial address book. It is a bit like a physical search engine. With enclave, no DNA. The clear continuity of roads accessible to all has been lost, and yet it is a prerequisite of a democratic city. The public space is the res publica, and it is disappearing in many countries who have been working. Sustainable is transformable, and in an enclave there is a very few possibility for transformation, no possibility of expanding the real estate, no link. So we are working in different countries and we face this problem everywhere. It is not exactly building, it's before building, but it's contained the building or not. We need to rehabilitate and to conserve everywhere the public space, this res publica. We must reinvent new form of the street and strategy to renew it. I design neighborhood with open blocks as a mean to make streets in a new way. On different way, on different scale, architects must advise authority and design network of thoroughfares capable of acting a new links that incorporates facilities. Any zone that is enclosed or poorly connected should be recrossed with public thoroughfares and reconnected with bridges, tunnel, in order to get rid of the enclave effect. We are working that in Paris. Avenue of the suburb became pipes. We need to transform them, to start again with them, to create new work of lines that incorporate density. Lastly, we must refuse to build where is no link with an already lively zone, where is no link with the life. We cannot build in new isolated places. New enclaves, we know, will be tomorrow's ghettos. So I wanted to concentrate on this topic because I think it's really urban planner, landscape designer, but architect also task.
To say, if you're having trouble hearing, you can use the little the little earbuds by your seat. Thank you very much. And Richard, I don't know how you're doing. And I think we'll say goodnight to Richard Rogers and thank him very much. Yes, and now we'll hear from Wang Shu.
Sorry, my English is very bad, but I try to explain what I'm thinking about the built environment. It's I come from China, you know. It's I think in the end of the 20th century, the most victory of modern architecture movement is happened in China. It's incredible victory, right? And long time I continue to think about what meaning of architecture, what meaning about design. You know, between the 20th century, the architect's job is not so important, so influential. So just start from the 20th century, it's a so large scale redesign, new design, urban planning happened in all over the world. I think some new concept is architecture design don't need to continue follow the history. We can let the history stop. We can let the natural evolution stopped. We can have a revolution. So modern architecture, its meaning is the revolution. Design is the new revolution. So what's the effect? What's the result about this revolution? I think it's very clear. If you go to China, you will find what's the meaning of the revolution in the architecture. So in the past 30 years in this huge country, almost 90% history building be destroyed, be demolished. The people, they just want to have the new city, new architecture, new environment, more clean environment, something like this. So suddenly I found this word, clean, in fact, it's a very dangerous word. What's meaning without clean? For example, these 3 days I stayed in New York. I see the New York street a little bit dirty, a little bit disorder. I think if New York becomes very clean, I think New York is not New York. Right. In China also like this. It's every city you can, the people abandon their beautiful courtyard house. They want to go to the high-rise, the apartment units. Everybody very happy, abandon their life, abandon their history. They don't worry about this because everything happened too fast, something like this. So sometimes I think maybe 10 or 20 years later, many people were very, very nervous about their life because they almost lost all about their history and memory and life, any traces about their life, lost. They are directly abandoned that. For example, I designed a Ningbo History Museum start from 2003. It's a very typical situation. If you work in China, you'll find this area, originally they have 30 beautiful village, beautiful traditional courtyard house there. Then suddenly, all the village be destroyed, demolished. Of course, the people is not poor people. The government pay big money to the people to demolish their house. Then they will rebuild new area here. They call the new area is a new city center. Its name is Small Manhattan. There, in the southeast China, it's a middle-scale city, just have 7 million population, not so big. Yeah, they have a new city center there. They demolished old village there. When I go to there, I find everywhere like the ruins. The village be destroyed. Everywhere is tiles, bricks, traditional dirty materials, everywhere like this. If you're architects, how you can start your design there? No any trace about the culture. All the environment be destroyed. It's just like it's similar to, I remember Chairman Mao says, like the white paper. The revolution can let old national land become a white paper, then we can start new design, beautiful design on it. It's similar to this. It's the white paper, empty, no neighborhood, no history, no life, even no plant. It's just an empty plate, so huge. Then you will design a building here. It's similar to you design a building on the moon, on the Mars, like this. How you can do this? So finally, I do a simple decision. I ask to my client, can I collect old materials on the ruins of the village? We rebuild a new museum here. Then the work starts, but I think the client not like my idea very much. He's just curious about it. And just the past 1 year, he had more and more nervous about this idea. And finally, one day, he exploded on a meeting. He shouted to me, "What's the meaning? Why you use the so dirty, old, dark, old materials to build our new museum in this new city center? We called it New Manhattan. What's meaning?" So finally, I told to him, very simple, because your museum almost no collection. So maybe I designed this new museum use the recycled materials. It means we collect the building, collect the time, collect history. Yeah. I'm very happy is when the building be finished, so many people visit these buildings. It's from the first days, every day, more than 10,000 people visit that building. It's all the local people, Only 3 months, more than 1 million people visit this museum. One day I visit the museum, I meet an old lady. It's a very typical farmer lady in this area. And I asked him, do you like this building? Do you like this exhibition? It's the first time you come to here? He tell me, within 1 month, it's the 4th time he come to this museum. I asked her, which exhibition you most prefer? He tell me, the exhibition is very bad, very boring. I don't interested about the exhibition. I just interested about this building. Why? I asked her. He tell me, you see this wall? My courtyard house has been demolished. Now I live in a high-rise building, but you see this wall. It's a very friendly feeling to me, similar to my courtyard house walls. This is why I love to come to here. It really moved me. It's really let me feel that my work is meaningful. Thank you.
Well, what a difficult question. What is going to face architecture in the future? It's difficult because you have to know what is important, what is not important, as Alejandro said yesterday. And I'm sorry, but I still don't know what is important, what is not important. It's very difficult. I'm still learning. Because architecture is a public art. It's an art of the frontier between art and science, art and society. It's so complex. I have so many challenges every day, every hour of every day. You have a social challenge. You have to work on public housing. You have to work on changing the world, just changing the world. It's not easy. You have a technical challenge. Yeah, it's about construction, it's about safety on site, it's about energy saving. You have, we are in bad need of beauty in the world. Beauty, yes, beauty, poetry. And then we have to switch to this level as well. You have to be clever. I can spend hours talking how beauty is maybe one of the big challenges for the future. The right beauty, of course, not cosmetic beauty, the right one, the deep one, the real one. So, you know, it's difficult. And I spend the day moving from one to the other. And one day or the other, I will finally understand which one is more important. But if you ask me right now, tonight, what is one? I think that one I like very much, and I spend a lot of time, energy on, not just on this one, but it's trying to save cities. You know, it's not an easy thing. Saving cities, yes, making cities a better place to stay and to live. I'm Italian, and very little I can do about that. Being Italian means that in Italian, città and civiltà are practically the same word. City and civilization. Because cities are still in the good, in the bad, in the disaster sometimes, but they're still place of civic life, still place of tolerance. It's a place where people know and learn how to use the diversity in a good sense. Diversity is not a problem. It's a great opportunity. Cities are a place, they are a great invention of human being. It's a place of a civic life. And you know, in the cities today, there is one part of the city that are particularly difficult, and they are peripheries. Yes, the peripheries are the place of the cities, well, you can call as you like. Outskirts, slums, banlieue, if you're in Paris. But peripheries are the future of the cities, or the end of the cities in reality. Energy is there. Periphery are in the city the factory of desires. And energy is there in the bad and in the good. but there are a lot of good energy in the periphery. And this is one of the big challenges. And I try to do something for that. And you know, working on peripheries is about fecundating the peripheries, about making place for people. So this is what I want to come to. You know, I think one of the challenges is to make place for people in cities. Yes, place for people are not just a cultural building, are not just museum. Building for where you share values, where you stay with other people. You enjoy the same joy. And of course, they are cultural at one condition, that they are not the big culture, open, accessible, not intimidating. Of course, they are cultural building, but also service building, civic building. I mean, and making those buildings is very, very, very important, because those buildings make people better people. Because it's about knowledge, it's about understanding, it's about learning, it's about enjoying, it's by finding, understanding beauty again. So making people better people implies making buildings that make cities better cities to stay. And a long time ago, well, Richard Rogers just left. When we were, a long time ago, young bad boys, we made Beaubourg, I mean the Centre Pompidou in Paris. That was just the beginning. It's a place for people. It was also protest against something, of course. Everybody knows that. And then, very recently, we just finished the Whitney Museum in New York here, not far away. Well, that's another case. But I can go on forever, but I don't want to make too long. The thing I want to talk about, just a few seconds, is about the building we made 15 years ago in Rome. It's an auditorium. Actually, they are auditoria for music. And music is one of those expressions of beauty that are particularly profound and meaningful, because music is a universal language and is really very touching. And, you know, this building was made in a place that was a fragment of a periphery in the center of the city. It was actually car parking for a soccer stadium. Beautiful one, by the way, made by Pierluigi Nervi a long time ago. But it was just a fragment of periphery, because periphery are very funny. They are not necessarily far away. Sometimes they are trapped in the city. They are brownfield. And it was a terrible place, very dangerous even. And then because of that place, that is, again, a place for people. It's a place where people go. They go for music, but they go for many other reasons, just to stay together. This place became, you know, one of the meeting places of Rome. I'm just making this example because I think that this idea that working, well, this is not the peripheral Rome, but working on this specific point, that the future of cities, somebody talked about the future of the city, the city of the future, but the city of the future is already there. It's the one that is around the city of the present. And this is fundamentally what I think I will point out tonight, but I'm not very sure. Maybe tomorrow morning will be something else. But thank you for it.
Alejandro, what is the role of architecture in contemporary society? That is the question. The role of architecture is to inscribe urbanism and poetry in the city. You say also that there are several battles that need to be won. I am trying to begin a very ambitious battle with a lot of people in France. This battle is to recover the right to practice architecture, because we think really that architect is an animal in the way of disparition. If you think about the evolution of the role of the societal role of the architect since 1 century, since the beginning of the urbanization, is vertiginous. I remember 30 or 40 years, the power of the architect was stronger than now, a lot stronger. And now, for all the main decisions linked to architecture, initially, architect is generally absent. All the big decisions, initial decisions, are taken by politicians, by bureaucracy, by technocracy, by engineers of technostructure. Architects are very far. And now, with all the mondial system of approximately the same rules to create cities, urban planning, with always the same system of zoning, same densities, zoning of functional zoning, with all the same building of the same category together. Architects, generally, when they arrive on a project, they have a rectangle, a cube. They have a density. They know exactly how many square meters they have to do. They have enough, just enough the volume to put the floors. And they have to create some facades with the money really restricted. And now, the architect, who has the power initially, is sponsored by contractors. And generally, contractors are developers or investors. And we have to follow that. So, we think that it's a disaster, the disparition of the societal role of the architect. And it's not a corporatist problem. It's not to defend the architect and our work. It's to defend all the people around the world, all the people living in the city. And I think we have a responsibility. All the architects working here on unique projects, very often, like the Pritzker here, we have a responsibility to denounce this kind of situation. And we have to organize with a lot of people. If it's a corporatist battle, we will lose this battle. But if we can have with us all the thinkers, philosophers, artists, but also a lot of people in the social way, association of inhabitants, political parties sometimes, ecologists of course. All the groupment of people has to say that it's a disaster to build the city without humanism and poesy. And the architects are here for that. Other people now, in the way of the development of the cities, are only on the functional question and economical questions. And these economical questions are so important that now we can discover that apartments programs are poorer than the program of the 60s or 70s. A 3-room apartment now in France is 60 square meters. 30 or 40 years, that was 70 square meters. It's so expensive. So I think politicians, they don't know, they don't see, they are blind, they don't see the evolution of the city. They think it's totally normal to have that. We are on a crossroad. We know that it's impossible. We know that we cannot progress like this. So I propose once more to fight. And you began well. And we could be, I think, a lot of people all around the world. We will begin that in France, but I think the target of that is to create an NGO for this humanist value all around the world, to talk about the pleasure and the hedonism to live in the city, and to work also on the strong differentiations of the rules of formations of the urban planning. Because now we have always the same illness in the main cities all around the world. Thank you.
So among the challenges, I would choose one, which is the migration towards cities, which in principle is good news. Cities are concentration of opportunities, of jobs, education, access to sanitation, even recreation. Cities are shortcuts to correct inequalities. You can improve quality of life without having to wait for income redistribution if you identify strategically projects in the city of public space, of public transportation, of housing and infrastructure. So, in principle, good news. The problem is that, which I would call the 3S menace, is that the scale, the speed, and the scarcity of means with which we will have to respond to this process of urbanization has no precedence in human history. For you to have an idea, more than 3 billion people live today in cities. 1 billion is under the line of poverty. By 2030, more than 5 billion people will live in cities. 2 billion are going to be under the line of poverty. This means that we will have to build a 1 million people city per week with $10,000 per family. 1 million people city per week with $10,000 per family. If we don't solve this equation, it is not that people will stop coming to cities. They will come anyhow, but they will live in very bad living conditions. So what to do? One thing that we've been exploring for more than a decade at Elemental is against scale and speed. We won't solve the problem unless we include people's own resources, own building capacity, own ideas and knowledge. So governments and businesses may have to take care of frames of what needs coordination, of what needs more difficult technical knowledge, but then come up with designs that are open so that people can add their own resources. Otherwise, we won't even tackle and even close to the 1 million people city per week with almost no money. The other strategy against scarcity is that if you don't have money for everything, focus now on what's more difficult. Incrementality is a way to face scarcity. Do now what is more difficult to be achieved and allow them, people, other agencies or governments to keep on adding to add quality to that open system. So this is the thing that we have been trying to do in our projects, and as a contribution to the challenge, from now on, this very moment, if you go to our website, www.elementalchile.cl, you will be able to download all the files, all the drawings, all the plans of the housing projects that we have done and use them as a reference for your own problems at home. Thank you so much.
This is extremely inspiring, and last night at the Pritzker ceremony, afterwards I was talking to Tom Main, who wanted to be here tonight as well and could not be here, and he said if he could be here, he would say that the most important fact about architecture today is that it's a collective activity, and it is no longer about the object building, but about the city and urban design. And I think that is something that everybody has said here, and I want to get back to the idea of the object building in a minute. But first, I think the most critical question from what almost all of you have discussed here is how, I like Jean Nouvel's call to arms, we need to fight, but how, in fact, do architects regain a role in society of leadership and not just, as Richard Rogers said, put lipstick on the pig? Or did he say elephant? Anyway, you get the idea. Who would like to, I mean, this is a really serious, there's a lot of all of you have many, many powerful ideas to express here. How can you get them listened to and acted upon by people in power?
Not to stay in our little world, the world of architecture. We have to be connected. We have to talk with other people, and we have to show the importance of architecture for the world. In France, architecture is for interest, public interest. I know if it's the case in other countries, but I think it's right.
Do others of you have a comment?
Yeah, I totally agree. We need to the battle, especially for to keep the humanity. In fact, it's we should defense the place, the environment, the built environment. I think it means it keeps the important things about humanity. It's not just about natural environment, about just the social environment. In fact, it's a cultural environment. They combined everything together. But another side, I think, as architects, we should know we have an incredible power on hand after 20th century. We are professional architects, and we changed so many people's lives. We changed the environment. Yeah, we can't say this responsibility is just the developer's mistake. It's not the architect's mistake. So many architects just follow this stupid urban planning and developer project and do the job. Yeah.
This whole question about the object building versus a larger program, is the idea of the object building, and most of you are known for designing beautiful buildings that do have an impact on your surroundings, but is the idea of the single building, antithetical to the idea of addressing the larger urban needs, and how do you make the public understand that you're invested in something larger than the individual project?
I'm a bit slow, so I'm answering to a question before. No, I will also try to. I think there are so many things we have to do to have a serious function in the society, to be useful. I think the first one for me is to hold the pencil in my hands. Yeah, to have the instrument of designing, conceiving, making the building, making good buildings solid, functional, good, beautiful. And this is the instrument, like a surgeon, like a doctor making surgery. You need to hold this in your hand. I think this is one thing that you certainly need to do. Then you have many, many other things. I'm sorry, I can't answer to the second question because I was thinking about the first one.
Yes, well, I live in a country where it's the size of the United States with 22 million people. So our issues are so incredibly different to the issues of Europe and most other places, particularly China. And Lloyd Rees, one of our great painters who died maybe 20 years ago, said, "What is a city if it's not a gallery of beautiful buildings?" And I think therein lies a question that we're not producing very many beautiful buildings. I think that beautiful buildings must go beyond lipstick, and it must develop into spatial understanding. And as Renzo points out, this comes not from handling a mouse. That doesn't come from anywhere else but the mind and that eye-hand connection. And that eye-hand connection is extremely important to thinking. And thinking is absolutely at the core of designing, visualizing. And I'm afraid to say that today, with the photography and publications are at the cause of some of our worst buildings that are being produced because they publish them so well. The photographers are so good, and the architecture is so bad when you visit it. So my view is that we are losing the gallery of beautiful buildings. We are putting up a whole lot of merchandise.
I think we all like to make one beautiful building, but we know also about how the architect is, the difference, how he is understood when we are working on several buildings, when we are working with the mayor and the inhabitant and the different actors and investors on the task of a neighborhood. Then immediately you have an understanding which is very different. You have many discussion, opposition, agreement, and this is a way you realize that in this kind of activity, you are helping to make that architecture and urbanism, they are linked, is understanding as a way to have a better living, a better spirit of the living, but a better physical living also. Through this activity of a neighborhood, you have everything is coming. And you see through question and discussion that the interest and the understanding is a lot better. It's very different. When you are doing one cultural building, for instance, you have an effect which is mainly aesthetic, and it's not enough to face the problem we have all in front, which is this problem of the territories. I don't think it is enough to consider that this is a gathering of beautiful buildings. I think that there is a frame between space and nature and linking the people. We need beautiful buildings. Maybe we need some. We have to invent a system which incorporate even some architecture we would not like so much. You know, there is such a diversity today. An intelligent way to make a neighborhood is to include diversity and to create a unity and to create an understanding. So it's not so complicated. It's understood by people. But I would say Jean Nouvel was right to say this is very difficult now because we are facing an evolution in which the way architect is contracted to work in France, we see that is changing. We are contracted directly by the contractor, by the builder, and we are contractor. We are working beside sometime the enterprise, the contractor. And this is something we should absolutely fight against. Not the contractor is not the evil, but we have to in every moment to keep the right direct link with the mayor and with the inhabitant, with the users. I've seen that in Brazil, for instance, very strongly. Many architects are very good. They have no possibility really to work. They are disconsidered. The glory time of the 50s when Reidi and Niemeyer existed, not exist anymore. And this is a main problem also.
Alejandro, yes, would you speak to that? Because I think your work very much you are an instigator and you engage people from the very, very beginning, from the outset with your work.
I would say it would be a mistake to believe that because the problem is big, the answer has to be big or large scale or urban design. Eventually, for a given problem, an object, a single building, might be the solution. It will depend on the case. The most important thing, I would say, is to understand that the starting point should be as far away from architecture as possible in problems that the entire society is interested in, can relate to, can even have an opinion, and these problems tend to be rather simple, in the sense that, if I name a few, like insecurity, climate change, pollution, waste, migration, or on the other end of the spectrum, banality and mediocrity, with one single word, we all understand what's the kind of problem that we're trying to deal with. But then our way to engage this non-specific challenge is through the specific knowledge of architecture, which is doing designs. If there's any power in architecture, that's the power of synthesis. The more complex the problem, the more need for synthesis. So eventually, even an iconic building might be the solution for a given set of circumstances when you're trying to capture energies and forces that are in the air. Eventually, the solution may not be even an object, may be a void, a street, a square. So the thing, I guess, is to be able to carefully read what is the question, spend time in understanding and even designing the question. There's nothing worse than answering well the wrong question, and only then use the power of synthesis of architecture to provide an answer for that identified question.
I'd like to ask the panel to address a question. I'm going to move to some of the questions that you all have submitted. But how do you address one aspect that Alejandro raised, which is how can architects contribute more to sustainable development on the planet? This question came from the Sustainable Development Goals approved at the United Nations, but I think just the sustainable goals in general, this seems to be the biggest crisis we're facing, and we have barely touched on it tonight. Would someone like to address that? How about you, the gentleman from the not densely populated country? Except all your people are populating the shore of your country. Are you worried about that?
I'm worried more about the population explosion that we don't talk about. The planet having too many people is the real problem. It's an issue that nobody likes to talk about. But in our country, 90% of us live between the Great Dividing Range or within 50 kilometres of the coast. And that's because, clearly, it's the area where we get the greatest rainfall, and it's the luscious areas of Australia. It's not the desert. In terms of sustainability, some of you will realise that it's the area that I have been most interested in my 47 years of practice, in understanding how we can put buildings together in the most economic use of materials, which does not mean the cheapest way of putting them together, but also the way of reclaiming those materials. In terms of sustainability, which is a very dangerous word, I might say, I much rather talk about responsible architecture rather than sustainable architecture. And responsible architecture embodies sustainability, but it's also about architecture for place, and an architecture that responds to the climate, an architecture that responds to the landscape, an architecture that responds to the cultural context, an architecture that responds to people and people's needs, and an architecture that responds to the economics of the place. These are some of the sustainable issues. It's not about the idea that air conditioner can be green. The air conditioners simply cannot be green. To be able to design a building that works on natural light, and a building that works on natural ventilation, and a building that you can smell when it rains and hear the rain trickling into water tanks, a building that can adjust to the climatic variations seasonally, annually. These are very important aspects of sustainability, and those aspects can be built into buildings, whether they be in the urban environment or be in the rural or regional environment. They are all part of sustainability. But I wasn't quite aware that we're going to be talking about this subject. But you know, in terms of material use, we can say that there are materials that, in terms of energy usage, are very high. For example, timber takes 5 megajoules per kilogram to process, and another megajoule to have it in its finished state, like the desk here. Or steel will take 42 megajoules per kilogram, and aluminium will take 140 megajoules per kilogram. These are very, very different costs. And if we're talking about sustainability, we must be able to be prepared to use a minimum of the very high energy end materials and use many of the lower energy materials. So these are some of the things to address in sustainability, if that's what we are going to address. Thank you.
This October in Quito will be the UN Habitat 3 conference, which happens every 20 years, where the urban agenda of the world will be discussed. So sustainable development will be pretty much at the core of the discussions over there. And what I've heard from Jean-Claude himself, being the director, executive director of the meeting, is that a slight shift in the general understanding of the relationship between cities and development may come out of the debates. Normally, the assumption is that a country has to grow, has to develop, and when they're rich enough, then the cities will be good places to live. So the kind of the quality of the built environment somehow is waiting for development to be done in the proper way. And his point was exactly the opposite. The making of the built environment in itself may be a way to achieve development. And if having 3 conditions, according to what I understood, he was advocating for, with the smart financing, with the proper rule of law, and with the right design, the cities may be these sustainable tools for development. If you get the right triad of finance, law, rule of law, and design, the slums of today may become the Manhattans of the future. Just to give one clue, he was saying, the proportion of public space to private space in Manhattan is 1-to-1. When you have a right width of a street, the right amount of collective places where people meet, how they move around, parks and squares, then individual actions add to a collective value. If you go to a slum, that ratio drops to less than 1-to-10. So every individual action is a threat to the common good. So I guess that if we can understand that the built environment in itself, if following these ways to be produced, then we may have a clue to contribute as architects, since we're very close to that practice for the sustainable development of the world.
There are so many areas we have touched on and more that we could touch on, but I want to just raise one more different area before we close. We've been talking about architectures that touches on many other fields, economics, science, and I wondered, I had a question here that I thought was particularly interesting, and just to get back to what Tom Main said, he said he's been teaching, he no longer is interested in teaching design, he only teaches urban design. But this question is particularly interesting from somebody here on the floor, which is if you were to study architecture today as a student, what adjacent field would be essential to your education and that was not a component of architectural education in the past? And I think that's a very interesting question for the idea of how we see architects in the future, and are they in fact Renaissance men and women, polymaths? What are some of the skills and areas of knowledge that you think will be important for the future generation of architects to bring to their role?
I think young architect has to understand now, because it's true since a long time, that urban design is architecture as a large scale and not a technical system. And when we understand that, we can think that we have to reconquer the role of the architect as the initial decision of the architecture on the large territories. If not, after, you cannot do architecture in the same way. And now, in the urban system we have, mainly in Europe, not in the country with a very speed development, but now we are in the period of mutation and transformation, and at the same time, urban planning and architecture. We have to forget urban planning. We have to talk about architecture.
I'm the professor teach in the academy about architecture. It's why I spend so lot of time to teach. It's really, I believe, education means future. But for the young generation, I think they're lucky because they face to a more and more diversity world. It's very good. Yeah, diversity means we don't have only one definition about architecture. Yeah, we don't just design the high-rise, huge glass shining, that's building. Diversity means in a different local area, people, they rejudge the tradition of the local architecture traditions, especially about the craftsmanship in different areas. It means what is the good architecture, the standard? It means it should relate on the different background of the local cultures. It's very important, I think. It means sustainable. The second, I think, is about society. We face to the more and more serious the social problem. For example, now in Europe, there's so large-scale immigration. How the architect can design a house for millions, immigration peoples. How to do that? How likely the people can mix in European culture? It's a big problem. Maybe young generation, they have a more clever, smart idea about that. I think another way is we more think about the architecture need more natural way to build the materials. We should think about it. It's not just about technique problem, I think. It means the culture. In fact, the many local tradition, it means another system. It's different from our academic modern architecture education. It's totally different systems. Now we start to rejudge these values. I think it means hope. It means more beautiful future for human, I think.
That's a lovely note to end on. Before we do, I just wondered if anybody else on this distinguished panel had a comment before we close. Renzo?
Very quickly. Of course, teaching at a certain age, passing to young people experience is a fundamental. So it's a constant question that we have in the office, myself. It's fundamental. It's not easy because it's fundamental about saying one thing, and everybody must understand this profession, this is a civic art. It's about civic function. It's about this. It's about people. But then it's not enough, of course. You have to make a civic, you have to be a civic builder. And to be a builder, well, of course, I'm not meaning constructor, you're builder, master builder. You must know how to do things. But you are a civic builder with that constant responsibility. And this makes us especially distinguished and dignified our role. And then you have to be a civic poet. The two things look funny and different, but they are the same thing. There's a poetry in construction. But it must be a civic poetry. I mean, this is certainly something not easy to explain, not easy to teach, but unfortunately, it's the only way you can do this profession, by learning how to be a good builder or a poet, eventually, but in the civic terms. And you know, the other thing I will say, and I keep saying all the time to students, is a bit what Glenn said before. It's about computer. Be careful. I love computer, but I hate computer simulation. Stay away from that, because they are fake. They never tell the truth. I mean, you fall in the trap of pleasure, the beautiful drawing. Long time ago, when I was a young student myself, we knew very well that making beautiful drawing was sometimes very dangerous, because you are falling in love with the drawing and not with the building. Now it's a day-by-day life experience. You push a button and you have a fantastic computer simulation. Computers are a fantastic invention, but be careful, because academia, in Italian academia, is not positive, it's negative. Mean repeating the gesture. Long time ago was something else, but now it's there. Now it's hidden in that logic. You make simulation, and you become happy because you made a great simulation, or you become sad because you made the wrong simulation. But anyway, it's a simulation, and it's fake. So I think this is another little practical suggestion. Don't trust simulation.
Glenn?
Yes, I'll try and keep this to the point. The question was, what are the subjects, perhaps, that the student should learn before, in addition to the courses that are generally structured. And of course, I think one of the great teachers is nature. And as Renzo has demonstrated in much of his work, nature has made a very big impact in some of the development of the designs. I had a wonderful teacher who gave us in first year in building construction the subject continuity in nature, discuss. And in that continuity in nature, it taught us about how things worked in nature. That was extremely important. And so I would suggest that if somebody could take on an understanding of biology and nature and be able to put that as part of the course, we might take people away from the mouse. Thank you.
Alejandro, would you like to have the last word? I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I most of all want to thank this distinguished panel. It is an honor to be here with you, and thank you all for your extraordinary insights. And I also want to thank very much Paloma Duran and her team at the Sustainable Development Goals Fund of the United Nations. It's very significant that this was the agency in the United Nations that wanted to host this evening and that sees the development of the built environment as the center of their work as long as it's done right. So thank you so much for having us and hosting us here tonight.